I don't believe that. Come on. I talked to Woodbury. What? I talked to Woodbury. Well. Hey, I'm looking for a chair. Thank y'all for the help. It ain't over yet, and it's getting hanging out there. Yeah.
How much stuff is that on the street out there? How much stuff is on the street out there? Really?
Is that Jimmy's table?
Show me a picture of it.
Oh, okay, sure.
Let's call the Waco County Commissioners Court to order this August 8th, 2023 at 9 o'clock. As Ms. Wallace call the roll. Here.
Commissioner Weir.
Here.
Commissioner Sugar.
Here.
Commissioner Eastman.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invitation to that program.
Good morning. Fathers, good morning to you. Today, God, is a day of urgency. Because we have so much that we need to ask you, yet we want to be thankful to you. Because you are a good God. You're perfect in all your ways. You fulfill all your promises. You protect us. You watch over us. You give us strength. You keep our feet and our thoughts failing completely. You always in the midst of every storm. So we thank you. Thank you, God, for always leading us. And we continue to follow you. Now, God, the urgency. Father, we need rain. Be merciful to us. All our knowledge and our technology, we cannot produce rain. You're the God of the heaven. You can. Our lakes, our rivers, our streams, our ponds, creeks, our livestock, our wells, our cities, our communities, this state needs rain. So we ask you for rain today in Jesus' name. I ask today, God, that you lead every aspect of this meeting, that peace, the servanthood of this community, and those in charge of serving this community, to follow your leadership and your Holy Spirit. Thank you, God, for this day that you've given us. May we find everything we do and say be pleasing to you today. In Jesus' name I pray. We all together to say, amen. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Before we reach the public comment today, we have a public service announcement. Diane Gonzalez, PEC.
Good morning, County Judge, Commissioners, staff, and attendees. I am Diane Gonzalez. I work with PEC Grinnell Electric Cooperative, and I'm very happy to share today that PEC is proud joining our members and communities in celebrating our 85th anniversary and the electrification of the Texas Hill Country. PEC, as some of you might know, was officially incorporated on May 19, 1938. And on September 27, 1938, we received a $1.3 million loan from the REA, which is the Rural Electrification Administration. And this was to build our first 1,800 miles of line that today has grown to 24,671 miles of line. We connected our first 422 members at our Bertram substation on October 27, 1938. PEC was created by Hill Country, Texas, led by then Congressman Lyndon B. Johnson, to provide safe, reliable, and low-cost power to our communities, and we have always stayed focused on that mission. LBJ once said, "Of all the things I have ever done, nothing has given me as much satisfaction as bringing power to the Hill Country of Texas." Over the past 85 years, PEC has grown to become the largest electric cooperative in the U.S., serving more than 1 million Central Texans in some of the nation's fastest growing counties. In fact, we serve all or part of 24 counties, where we serve 10,920 members here in Blytheville County, and we also serve 45 franchise cities. We are planning various events and activities to celebrate our 85th anniversary, including birthday parties with seniors also turning 85. And we're also asking members with historical items, photos, or stories to share them with us for our co-op archives. Our rich history includes being rooted in 7 cooperative principles. One of the core cooperative principles is concern for community, which guides our mission to help make a difference in the communities that we serve. In 2006, we launched our Power of Change program, which to date has provided more than $575,000 in community grants and support for nonprofits across the Texas Hill Country. Our community grants application is currently available on our website, which our website is pec.coop, for eligible nonprofits to apply online by October 1st for those that are eligible and interested. So I just want to say thank you very much. If anyone here is already participating in Power of Change, this is where your electric bill is rounded up. Let's collectively support worthy nonprofit projects. So fantastic if you're signed up. If not, just contact us at PEC, you can sign up. I just want to close with saying that I always like to say that we deliver more than just electricity. We're very proud to support the wonderful communities we serve, including yours, and proud of our 85 years of powerful memories with our members, and look forward to serving you with many more. So thank you so much for letting me share that.
2 quick things.
Yes.
One, I think 7 or 8 years ago, PEC was number 2. They were the second largest co-op in the country. It was one larger in Virginia or somewhere. And in that period of time, you all continue to keep growing, and you're now the largest in the
U.S. based on electric cooperative, being an electric cooperative, and based on our membership and the number of meters. And we're at over 390, almost 392,000 meters. We're anticipating possibly reaching 400,000 by the end of the year.
And then the second thing is, to you personally, I want to recognize you. I'm sure the commissioners would want to as well, because I've watched you over the past couple of years personally work with the county, the ESDs, the fire departments, working with the community to get the PEC grants for various first responder kind of things. And you're quite a hero in Blanco County for all that you've done to help us to get a little bit of money to do a little bit more.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And it really takes a great team, and I appreciate it. Thank y'all so much, and congratulations for the grants that y'all have obtained, especially the one for your Starlight, and area.
Don't know if you go up to the other office much in Marble Falls, but it broke ground.
That's exciting. Congratulations. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Public comments, Kenneth Welch.
Good morning. On 2 previous occasions, I spoke to you about including rainwater harvesting in your developmental rules and regulations as a water conservation issue. Unfortunately, it appears that when you decided to refer your proposed changes to outside counsel for review, you did not include any reference to rainwater harvesting in the document. During the historic drought that Blanco is currently experiencing, it seems appropriate that all measures should be taken to encourage water conservation by our current citizens and those moving into our community. The developers and builders impacted by new rules are critical in the water decisions that are made by future residents. I recognize the limitations on your authority and that you cannot require rainwater harvesting. However, I feel strongly that recommendations that rainwater harvesting should be considered is entirely within your authority. Prior to the April 19th workshop on this matter, the public was not advised of any proposed changes to be discussed. The public was allowed to make comments and recommend changes, and it was a very good, well-run meeting. But the public did not benefit from the opportunity to see your proposed changes before or after that meeting. The public has not been able to review the document you are discussing today. Please post your recommended changes for the public to review prior to a vote. Preferably hold a follow-up workshop and once again discuss the options with those in attendance. Most importantly, reconsider your position on the inclusion of rainwater harvesting recommendations as a conservation measure in your rules. I believe you will find that the public is very supportive of such recommendations. Table any decisions on this matter until the public can review the recommended changes and submit comments for your consideration. Here's a copy of my comments for your record.
Item 1, the previous minutes for your consideration.
I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes and accept them as presented.
Is there a second? Okay. Is that Commissioner Riley? Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2, the payroll for August.
Make a motion to approve the estimated August 2023 payroll in the amount of $476,851.42.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Weir, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, additional reports. Ms. Harrison, are we still with,
Yes, sir, they're all there.
they're all in there?
Yes, sir.
Yesterday they were, now they are all in and available for inspection. Subject to your approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the official reports as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Weir, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, line item transfers, there are none. That takes us to item 5, outstanding bills.
So I'd like to, so first off, we have some additional bills that did not make the time frame. City of Johnson City, GVTC Spectrum, and the credit card in the amount of $10,198.61. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the outstanding bills in the amount of $747,243.94 and include the additional $10,198.61.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Aker, discussion. Do we need to be adjusting processes or anything? I've noticed that some of it, this is kind of becoming routine, and it's not, certainly not a problem, but I just wondered if we were doing something inefficiently.
I've seen on this, sir, where there's other counties that do an order possibly for the treasurer to pay the regular utility bills, the monthly bills. I know that's something maybe we could look at. And then just give y'all a report to written report instead of, but it doesn't matter. It just seems like a way the court calls sometimes, if it's early in the month, it's hard to get everything in. And some of these really previously weren't charging us late fees.
Say that again.
Some of the utilities previously weren't charging us late fees,
Oh,
and now they are.
so now we're really rushed to.
Now, we really want to get in to avoid those.
Okay, well, whatever it takes, we don't want late fees. Further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. And that takes us to item 6, regarding the garden club.
Morning,
Morning.
I'm representing the Garden Club, J.C. Crafters. And this is Nancy County President, and I'm on the sale. And we're looking at to use commercial again this year to sell our ornaments. The same agreement that we had in the past. And a few different dates of the agenda that we would like to use for.
Seems like this last year went longer because I noticed the dates stopped at the week, at a couple of days before Christmas.
They extended lights for a week, they could put an 8 or something like that, so we chose to open it that last weekend in January. Lights being on.
But not this year.
We haven't heard what the dates are going to be this year, so do we need to come back to you if we decide to extend it as we said?
Yeah, I think if we're going to officially, unless the commissioners want to officially give you the extra time, I know we kind of like it when it's early, to be honest.
Yeah, us too. It's a lot of work.
So, what is this rumor that the garden club doesn't exist anymore?
Well, the garden club, as far as gardening and our regular monthly meetings, but we used to have a program and do with gardening, so. Yeah, everybody wanted to be also, these meetings anymore, but few of us were still interested in crafting. We have had, so it's a garden club, we're more of a craft. We still operate under the garden club name and have garden club and not bank, bank.
You keep the name, but your function basically is fundraising for,
Business.
is it what you do for fundraising?
All
For education?
of it goes to, EMS, the Alter Fire Department, Police Department, the library, and scholarships. We have 4 scholarships this year.
Thank you. And the last couple, 3 years, at least, they just keep getting bigger.
We do every year, we do more and more. We made between 15 and 20,000 last year. Or this past year, we made a little over 20,000.
Fire departments and
Of course, we pay for our supplies out of that. And we have a little appreciation luncheon in January. All the rest goes back to the community.
And do you have any thoughts or concerns if you wanted to discuss the idea of you being on the bottom floor of the old jail?
I've heard a discussion about that, that'd be great.
Why would that be great?
Well, it's like more space, better facilities as far as bathrooms.
Be more convenient for us as far as the table set up. And I'm sure coming with it.
It's not really,
No, but it would be more convenient.
So that may be a future discussion, just really not taking today.
yeah, we can totally look into that.
Okay, commissioners.
Make a motion to allow the Johnson Garden Club to utilize the first floor of the courthouse to sell ornaments during light spectacular season for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, beginning November 24th. And last weekend will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, December 22nd and 23rd.
Is there a second? Commissioner Riley? Please. Discussion. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, it is a bit of a hassle, door locking, this and that, the other, but it's good to revere, remind me that, it's really worthy cause.
Yes.
Causes. Thank you for your.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Item 7, we kind of need the commissioner's court to acknowledge no change in the sheriff's and constable's fees, so that it's an annual requirement for the sheriff's office.
Make a motion to acknowledge a no change in the sheriff and constable fees for 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Beer, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then item 8, Commissioner Weir's old Ford truck that was previously Sheriff Jackson's department's old Ford truck.
Yes.
Needs to be serviced.
And I'd like to move that we declare service property for 2010 Ford F-150 4x4 and authorize the sale on it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Beer, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, maintenance bonds for Majestic Hills.
We've reached a period where the maintenance bond on Majestic Hills has expired. It expired on the 13th of last month. Red Oak Mountain will expire in 2 days. So with that, I would like to make a motion to release the maintenance bonds for Majestic Hills Phase 1 and 2 and Red Oak Mountain subdivisions.
Is there a second? Commissioner Brown, discussion. So it's already been that long, because this is,
Yes, sir.
there's construction bonds and then maintenance bonds, and then there's nothing.
That's correct. It's one.
Did we talk about in our subdivision regulations extending the maintenance bonds to a longer period of time?
There was some discussion of it when I talked about.
Multi-error.
No. I think we're on that.
Well, it was a 2-year timeframe. So I know there was some discussion of making it either a 3-year to even a 4-year. And I think Mr. Bischoff described that the 2-year timeframe was sufficient in his opinion.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, further discussion regarding the budget. I have a list of things to go over with you, and then, of course, I have this thing to go over with me. And I wanted to highlight Wednesday, August 2nd, Fredericksburg Standard, the top headlines on the front page. Hey, dominates county budget talks. And it talks about the sheriff's department increase proposal that would mean another $830,000 to the county budget. And I think there's a reference in here, Kendall guys, well, my point is simply that it's everywhere. It's not just us. It's not just really this year. I think this is cyclical and we go round and round and round. I don't have an issue because we definitely want to keep quality, we have a quality county service organization. But it seems like if we do something, then our neighbors do something to exceed it, so we have to do something to keep up with the neighbors and just go on and on. And we don't think that people, and I know the commissioners do think this, don't think that people wake up in the morning and drive to Fredericksburg for more money. Wrong. Or Greenberg or elsewhere. So just to point out that it's not just this commissioner's court that gets to face this everywhere all the time.
On the budget, we made a few last minute things that I filed for you to, for your consideration today. So you'll notice that the proposed tax rates are in there. It's just a proposal, or kind of an initial proposal at this point to raise the funds necessary. The rate for the ad valorem tax is 29.2597. And then the INS rate is 7.25. The part of this, I just want to recall and remind you that the homestead exemption being raised to 20% is, number one, going to help people who have homesteads in Blanco County, and number two, going to reduce the revenue. That one action is going to reduce revenue by $800,000. So the fact that the M&O rate is a little higher than last year is not surprising, but I think it will still work out such that people with homesteads actually see a benefit this year, I hope. I'd also point out to you on that general revenue page that the sales tax, much as I don't like it, in order to get to a reasonable close balance, I went ahead and proposed that the sales tax revenue would be 1.273148, which is the full load that the controller's worksheets that Ms. Fry uses would say. I think I think that this will make our auditor a little more happy because she thinks I was under-reporting and under projecting and not reporting. And it's accurate. I just think it doesn't leave us any wiggle room at all. So I'm not thrilled about it. That's what I put down there for you. Item 3 involves a salary change in the sheriff's office. We didn't pick up Lieutenant Acosta's recent change to be lieutenant. He was still a sergeant for putting together the budget. So his number has been changed to the maximum increase based on the salary survey of all lieutenants. His number has been changed to the maximum increase that we, I think, agreed upon of $6,000 for anybody, even if you don't reach the required minimums at this point. The ag extension salary, we lowered the slot that was occupied by Mr. Wieners. I don't know why they were out of sync, but for some reason they got out of sync. And the proposed increase for the other ag extension agent, it was much lower, and we got to look at it really to figure out why the one was higher. So we reduced the Wieners slot back to compare with the other slot. Jailer dispatcher salaries. When we last talked, I think we were proposing somewhere in the neighborhood of $39,000. And the proposal is $40,001. This is based on something that I'm not sure is completely accurate, but as the sheriff went to his annual conference and came back with some information and discussions that we had on Senate Bill 22, the thought is that in order to qualify for the grant money that's in Senate Bill 22 for law enforcement salaries, you have the jailers and dispatchers have to be making $40,000. I don't know if I read it exactly that way. I think it says the first thing you have to do with the money is get jailers and dispatchers to $40,000, and then you can sprinkle the raises out appropriately accordingly. All that said, we still raised it to $40,001 because at the time that was the information I had. that's what we need to do in order to qualify. The next item that I have is about school resource officers. I told you that the child safety fund really couldn't afford to support it. I have spoken with both of the superintendents more than once, and they certainly, I was asking them if they felt like the new legislation that provides some money from the state for school resource officers was going to be sufficient, we could drop off. They did not. The new legislation requires resource officers for every single campus. And in, let's say, Blanco's case, that's at least 3 campuses, so that's at least 3 officers all the time. And the state's only giving $15,000 per officer. Plus, I think like $1 per student, which still doesn't even come close to paying for 3 officers. So I'm proposing in the community services line item the same as we did last year. And I learned one more interesting fact that I think you will find interesting. Kendall County provides school resource officers for the schools. I guess they're out and out sheriff deputies that are school resource officers in schools, which is not the case here in Blanco County. But Kendall County, as you know, Blanco County ISD extends into Kendall County down in the southwest corner. And I believe, I heard this right. I'm not sure it may be as many as 67 kids, I'm not sure. They have several Kendall County school-age residents that attend Blanco County ISD, and Kendall County provides supplement to the Blanco ISD for their school resource officer program because of that. So even Kendall County contributes, and I think they contribute $7,000. So our $20,000 for all of South Blanco County is probably a market. Just reporting that to you. I never did mention to you, it was kind of obvious, I thought, but I never did mention to you that the elected official salaries that were proposed and filed as proposed and that you have before you. I went with what I thought was the prevailing view that we would raise it to a maximum raise of $6,000 or less, depending on what the salary survey said. Salary survey didn't always support that large raise, so they did not. I did not put it in. But where the salary survey suggested or requires even more than $6,000, but we cap everybody at the $6,000 rate. That's what I did. There's another item that we added on the non-departmental at the very bottom for the fire alarm system for the courthouse. On a personal note, I was driving by the Mason County Courthouse 2 Sundays ago, having come for the cattle auction, and they're coming along very well. The structure's coming back up and looking like it once was. And I thought to myself, what a terrible ordeal they had to go through, and sure wouldn't want to be in their place, and sure don't want to have that happen here, and feel like a fire alarm system. Not a fire suppression. We want to get in trying to plumb the whole building for sprinklers and all that, but at least an alarm system to get help here quickly, and a wireless alarm system. So Matt McMahon, our fire official here in the county, has been looking for us, and that's the reason the number that's placed in the department of $25,000 is there, because that's the number he's been experiencing or receiving. So we're not close to putting out a bid or figuring out how to get one yet, but because he's still working on it, but we're working on it. We need to push it forward. Trying to do that. And that's my personal appeal to you, and to try to get a fire alarm system for this building. Then the next one I have is kind of off the wall. Commissioner Eaker and this is just in the neighborhood of salary discussion within the budget and kind of personnel discussion as well. But Commissioner Eager had floated the idea that maybe not everybody has to have a CDL to work for in your appointments.
I've talked with, Sergeant, Pitcher here of this district, and he advised me that to operate anything under, I believe it's 450, you can operate it without a CDL. What they were referring to in this letter from, or message from TAC was, Pitcher told me, Sergeant Pitcher told me, said, the only difference is you have to have a CDL, anything over the 450. But the main part of it is they do not have to keep a daily log, but we do have to have a CDL.
So when you say 450, you mean an F450, which equates to a Dodge 4500, which equates to a Chevrolet something 4500. So anyway, and then the further discussion is if you're running a grader or a wheel loader or something else in a construction site, that's not a legal driver's license issue. So are we? I'm not exactly sure where we are. I know at one point we talked about paying additional to get a CDL, and then we talked about just requiring a CDL. Is that where we are?
So we talked about, I think in this year's budget, we have some funds for CDL training. That way, if we have a person that we're trying to hire that doesn't have a CDL, we have some funds to put them through training, get their training. Some people, maybe they don't want to train, but they want a CDL or whatever. I don't know the stats of that, but we do have the funds made.
So my question I think is, I don't have a CDL currently, so I was to apply to one of you. Am I eligible or not eligible? It's not a good question because I'm probably eligible for lots of reasons.
If you was to, yes, you'd be eligible for hire. And we could, you can work as one individual does. You can work with non-CDLs, as long as you don't drive that type of equipment. But we do have funds available that we can send you to school to acquire your CDL.
I think probably encourage you to hire somebody like that as a boy should get it on and try to work through it. There should be a probation period. Give us some incentive to do it.
So doesn't this answer your issue of
Yes.
you can hire somebody that doesn't have a CDL? You can run somebody that doesn't have a CDL, as long as they don't drive.
They'll drive anything over certain things.
Okay. Okay. It's clear enough for me. Those are the things I have. If you all have other things to talk about. It would be good if we could get a proposed budget voted on today so that we can get the calendar as there's going to be being able to do advertising too much longer. Sarah, is that right?
Yeah, there's something I would make for the salaries. Possibility of the proposed tax rate.
So, anybody have an idea?
So there's one change that needs to be made, but I don't have the dollar number. On page 8, 101. Needs to change. Do we do that? You want to do that now, or do you want to do that? You're going to propose it.
If you're
your intent on doing that, I guess we should do it now so that whatever's in the newspaper is accurate or full disclosure to the public.
So my intent is to do that, and make sure that happens. The question is, I don't know on the salary survey what that number was, or where would it at?
Well, what you could do
It's just,
I hate what you do, I'm sorry.
it's to match the commissioner.
Either that or, see, I think the salary survey showed it lower, it showed a higher end and a lower end. The county judge and did the commissioners, I don't know why it showed a bigger range. What you could do is, move to, do the lower of the salary survey or $6,000. I don't think it should go any higher than anybody else.
Yeah, so I'd like to increase it to 67,112.
Let's do that as a separate motion. Sure. So that's your motion. Is there a
I'll
second?
say,
Discussion? The discussion will be on, definitely abstain from this one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? One abstention. Yeah. On to the budget as a whole.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed budget with that change. As presented.
Is there a second? Commissioner? Any, okay, further discussion? Anything else? Did I miss anything? Anyone else?
No, the only thing is Mr. Eager's, new duty.
Oh, yes, okay, sorry. Good point, thank you. So Commissioner Eager has agreed to accept the assignment to, as a side duty, like the recycle center, indigent care, and all of those things. And I think we have the most regularly, right? But he doesn't get paid, he wouldn't get paid until, wouldn't start getting paid, wouldn't start accruing pay until October 1st, when the new budget starts. And we won't be adopting the final budget probably until the first part of September, so the rest of it won't be totally official. But he's chomping at the bit, I believe would be the expression, and ready to go. And I was wondering if the commissioners had thought about sort of, I don't know if I want to call it informally, or, but sort of publicly encouraging him to go ahead and start overseeing the ratings department.
I think you should go ahead and start overseeing it.
I could say so moved, but it's formally, I won't say so moved. So
We're in the motion to adopt the proposed budget, to adopt a proposed budget.
Which the numbers in there, correct?
The numbers. It's just a question of people, okay, I guess one of this discussion, I think I heard two people already say that if we can go ahead and preliminarily start. Has the backing of the court to do
Yes. As of yesterday, I received a call in reference to a maintenance issue to try to address through that.
that. Okay, I've heard from Commissioner Weir, heard from Commissioner Leisman, and I saw Commissioner Riley nodding in the affirmative. You want to object?
No, I'm just waiting for a formal announcement.
Is that enough? Is this discussion enough? And there's
That's enough. I've already
plan what to do.
Are you okay with it, pulling this one? Oh, I just, all right. Anything else?
With the budget.
Yes, sir.
Let me mention one little kind. I don't know how we handle the exterminator for the north end for all the different complex. Do y'all have somebody contracted? Can we ask about that?
It goes to the south end.
Is he already part of that?
Not regularly.
Can we put him on a regular?
Look, Tommy, because I'll look.
Okay, please do.
Okay.
If it's quarterly or whatever it is, I'd like to have that.
Do you have anything with that, Chris?
I'm not sure what the schedule is. For I'm not real sure. I think it's an on-call as we go.
It's not something we have to change the budget for, if that's in the budget.
I guess under maintenance,
Courthouse maintenance, right?
Well, sorry,
south
Or
end.
staff.
If they're not, we'll check on how much it costs to add.
I would like to have a professional, I mean, quarterly or whatever y'all do, we can add it to it.
I can't remember, do we do quarterly, trimester?
Monthly.
Monthly? One of them.
If they're making their rounds, you good. Thank you.
That brings up, you know, we had dropped the jail while it was under construction. Are we gonna put that back online as well?
Yeah. Where it was in bicycle.
So I guess we can look at what that's gonna cost us, huh?
It's not. So, yeah, I agree with me.
So those will be relatively small adjustments that we'll have to do that and work on very well. What else? What did we decide about mail or mail?
I got prices on and refurbished.
And is it in?
Yes, yes, sir.
Anything else? Pretty good?
I already sent this to the paper. I might not be able to do the Thursday, Tuesday, I don't know, they've already printed.
My,
Yes.
we'll work that out somehow. Maybe a subsequent.
I may have to do a second posting.
Yeah, we got to.
I will contact them since we have it.
Okay. There's something else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Bass, okay. So, I think he is scheduled for 10 o'clock.
10:30.
10:30. So, unless you want something else, I think we'll have to recess until he gets here. If he's here before, as soon as he gets here, we can get started. Okay, we are recessed. All right, let's reconvene the meeting and the workshop, I'm not saying on the budget that I mentioned to you, and I wish the auditor were in here, but the rates that you have on your proposal that you just adopted to propose amount to the de minimis rate that's calculated by this fund. So just so you know, we're at the de minimis rate is the one we're using so far. Okay, so we have with us today Mr. Bass, who is a renowned expert in really Texas property law. And I have some minor familiarity because he has occasionally spoken at continuing legal education seminars that I've had. So he's probably used to, the Austin Convention Center with 300, 400, or 500 lawyers in the room. So this should be a walk in the park. But he is the firm that we frequently use, Allison Bass, and we use Jim Allison as our general counsel for the Commissioners and Judges Association. And then, of course, Eric is our primary litigator. But Mr. Bass is the guy when it comes to property law. And he has graciously taken on the task of helping us to get our subdivision regulations in compliance. By the way, you sent something yesterday that I think they have in front of them. But we also have RV mark regulations and time mark regulations that we're looking at. We didn't see anything on that, so I don't know if you're incorporating that into subdivision regulations, but that's going to be a separate discussion.
Well, no, we can cover all of it.
Okay, good. Two quick questions. Ambush. If I build a stock tank on a ranch, and it's not a major tributary, it's just a stock tank on a ranch, and it's I don't know, maybe an acre or 2 acres in size, and maybe 12 feet deep, so that would be about
12 feet.
Is that 4,000?
240.
Excuse me. Trying to do the acre feet. The point is, trying to stay under 200 acre feet of water. I can do that without any buddy's permission, can't I?
Absolutely, you
Okay, but if a creek, a known mapped creek runs through my ranch, and I dam it up for the same purpose, even the same size, does that mean I have to go get some permission?
It turns on whether or not the creek is navigable. And I'm not sure, the definition of navigation is pretty loose, but if it's navigable, and you can pound water, that's from the state water, you have to get a permit from the state.
And if I wanted to figure that out, would I be talking to TCEQ or somebody else?
Probably PCG would have jurisdiction, yes. I'd have to look into see exactly who else would have some permit issues.
You don't need to look into it for us right now. Maybe we'll refer something to you.
I think that answers the question.
Do we need to put a microphone on here?
Yeah, I was gonna just get the one on the podium. But you get it. Can you?
Yes.
So, the floor is yours.
All right,
problem, but when we looked at your ordinance, or somehow I was sort of out of the loop on how this came to light, but as I understand it, Eric was having a conversation, my partner was having a conversation with Judge Bray, and some mention was made of preliminary plats, and Eric made the comment that preliminary plats were no longer allowed, and the judge asked us to look at your existing ordinance and determine if it was compliant with the current law. This statute changed last session, not just immediately passed one, but in 2019. And what it says is a development plan includes a preliminary plat, preliminary subdivision plan, subdivision construction plan, site plan, general plan, land development application, or site development plan. So that's a pretty broad definition. Then sub B of this section says that unless expressly authorized by another law, a county may not require a person to submit a development plan during the plat approval process required by this subchapter. So that means you can't have a preliminary, you can't have a final, you have one plat application. And that plat application has to be complete before you accept it. Otherwise, your 30-day clock begins to run and you get into a time constraint. We've looked at your regulations and they seem to be pretty much in order. Let me give you sort of a thumbnail of the other statutes that we're going to have to comply with. This is a summary of the changes that the 2020, I guess it's the 23 legislative session adopted. This brings up another problem that the legislature has seen fit to give to us, in that under the definition of subdivision of land, an owner of a tract of land located outside the limits of a municipality must have a plat of the subdivision prepared if the owner divides the tract into 2 or more parts to lay out a subdivision of the tract, including in addition lots or streets, alleys, squares, parks, or other parts of the tract intended by the owner of the tract to be dedicated to public use. We've all known that if you have an open subdivision, that would fall under your subdivision regulation. We also had included under prior law, or if the use was intended for purchasers or owners of lots fronting or adjacent to the streets, squares, alleys, parks, or other parks, that was struck. So right now, that would mean that a private gated subdivision that no longer has, the roads are not dedicated to the public, or dedicated to the owners of the lots, that could conceivably fall outside of your subdivision authority. That is concerning because over time, very likely that subdividers will simply all go to private subdivision and strip counties of their subdivision authority, essentially. We're not sure that we're not real sure this requires an explanation. There was another version of the bill that required all sorts of other things, and the County Commissioners Association of Texas objected to that revision. And it went into a conference committee, and it came out of the conference committee with this change in lieu of the other. And so it may not be well thought through. It may be that this creates bigger problems or more problems than are not anticipated. And in light of the language above, that if you subdivide the subdivision into lots or spaces in a subdivision mobile home rental community, or a meets and bounds description of separate units, that could be still a subdivision that has to be platted, even though the streets in that private subdivision are not dedicated to public use. So I think there's going to have to be litigation over this matter to help the courts help us define what the legislature's intent was. But that's sort of the problem that we have generally, and this legislative session didn't do us any favors, it made it worse. So, also of concern is this added section: a plat is considered filed on the day the application submits a plat, along with a complete plat application, and the application fees and other requirements are met. And so if it's presented to the Commissioner's Court or to a county authority responsible for approving plats. So some counties have set up a plat approval department, if you want to call it that. Others, it still has to come before the full Commissioner's Court, but there is a division there that needs to be addressed, in that somebody in the county has to be on top of, from day one, someone who comes in wanting to file a plat application. The reason for that is your clock starts when it is accepted, when the plat application is accepted. And it defines what acceptance means when it submits the plat. Now, it does say a completed plat application. So that brings us back to, you have to have a complete application. Again, somebody in the county needs to be well enough informed about what is in your subdivision regulation. They have a checklist that they go through. And your subdivision ordinance does a good job of doing that. There will have to be some changes made to it, but it's a pretty comprehensive subdivision regulation. And I don't expect it to be that much trouble to make it fit into this little window that the legislature has laid out in front of us. There are other requirements laid out by the legislature. We don't need to go through all of those. We can come back to that in a moment. I'm going to call up, I'm taking your subdivision regulation and converted it, you might say, to other uses. Yes, sir.
Take the motion.
Yes, sir.
I can wait for the.
No, go ahead.
There seems to be a old wives' tale running around, or rumor running around, that this county has decided to raise the requirements, and this county has decided to raise the requirements, and specifically I'm referring to acre size for wastewater treatment and for wells. And currently, Blackwood County is at 5 acre minimum if you're going to have a well and a septic tank, a 3 acre minimum if you're going to have one or the other. And I
impression that that's the maximum that we are at, that we did the most we could do. And I'm hearing rumors that such and such counties has made it, raised it to 7 acres. 7 acres, and such and such county made it 10 acres. And I'd like to think that those are just species rumors that don't have a living, that we are still having.
Well, I know that, this 232, the local government code itself, does not give counties authority to regulate lot sizes. However, you have authority under the health and safety code and septic permitting, depending on your perk test. What is the requirement here for a drain field? And so if your ordinance is coupled to what is commonly known in the county as what is the minimum lot size that a perk drain field can be installed successfully, then I think that sets your limit for your size. So your 5 acres may in fact be somewhat in violation. I think TDCQ says that a minimum of 1 acre is required for septic systems. And so anything over that would have to be based on the septic permit. You would not have generic authority to set a higher requirement.
I think we think that our requirements are based on TCEQ determinations.
And we will double check that for you, but that would be the only caveat I have on that.
But, so you're saying that there may be a county that can go and hire and find?
Well, if they're perk tests, now that's pretty unusual, I would think, for the county to require lot sizes through their septic permitting for larger lots. 10 acres is pretty extraordinary for a lot size. I'm skeptical that that would stand true. If the county has cleared that with TCEQ, it may well be that you're fine at 5, but I just have to double check that.
So a question on that. So in our subdivision rules and regulations at this moment, we don't require a perk test, per subdivision. However, I do have one that people are talking about right now, that they were asking, is this something that they require? The outside engineer firm that we use, they did come back and say that according to some rules and regulations, not like kind of the state rules, that it is required for them to do a perk test per subdivision.
If they're going to use septic system.
Right, and everybody around here does.
So that sets you in a different category. If you have a system, a water system, either a municipal water system, a private water system that sells wastewater treatment and so forth, then the lot size goes way down.
Correct.
Am I hearing this dialogue to say that while we've been operating thinking that we have a cancer countywide assessment on TCEQ that our 500 acre rules are okay, that in reality we should be having that different parts of the county might be different. We have to have a perk test done for every subdivision proposed wherever they are in the county.
I think so. Yes, perk test would be the first place to go to determine the lot size.
Ask you, if it's a proposed subdivision of 5 acres, and the developer has to do perk testing on the property. When we do it with water, we triangulate down so many wells per 100 acres. How do you perk test 1,500 acres? 5 acres where one end of the ranch or whatever the development, it'd be different strategy. Is that on an average, where they come up with 5 acres?
I'm not a person that has the expertise to answer that question directly, but I know that I would assume in Blanco County that your elevation changes and so forth, you're gonna have some areas that are heavy clays and are gonna have a low perk
You're gonna have other areas that are more elevated ground and have rockier ground and, something maybe even less than 2 acres might be adequate, but I don't know. I mean, that's up to, and so when you do the perk test for say 1,500 acres, you probably have to do multiple test sites. If you find a different reading on one, does that mean you can go down to 3 acres? Different reading might have to go up to 5 or 7. Yes, sir, because it's possible. So we could just do 5 acres of it. It could be very quite a bit. 5 acres, in my experience, is a little on the high side. It's normal, I say normal, it's pretty common to see 2 acres. The state's minimum is 1 acre. And so anywhere in between, the state requires 1 acre.
Requiring 1 acre for a well and a septic.
Or septic systems, yes. Well, and a septic system.
So I just want to make that clear, that you're telling the state.
Yes. And so, that's something to be concerned about.
Well, I was trying to find anyway, there was some paperwork that was from TCEQ to the county inspector's office. It's been a long time ago, but during that conversation that I had, there was specific paperwork that granted Blanco County this authority.
Well, then we need to find that document.
And I have it in an email somewhere.
We've got it, 5 acres is fine. Do they explain why?
It's been a while since I looked at it.
And so, put that on our list of things we need to find. All right, I've tried to go through your regulation and highlight places where we need to make changes. Now, in this first section, I've struck the private subdivision language to match the legislative enactment. Probably, if we're going to have a regulation, we don't want to openly flat the legislative enactment. That being said, I think the question of whether or not it lays out lots as that is commonly known, is I think that's our saving grace, if we can still require plat requirements for the entire subdivision on that basis. Now, the streets, we still have an issue to address, and I think that's where litigation will inevitably be filed on this new statute. I've gone through and everywhere I've found the word final or preliminary, I've tried to identify those. What I think can be done is we take preliminary plat requirements that are in your ordinance now, final plat or regulations. Your regulation says anything required in the preliminary plat or agreed to in the preliminary plat is, you don't have to repeat that in the final plat. And so we condense that into just the plat application, what has to be filed in the plat application. And then we put that just in the regulation. We try to keep as much cohesion as we can in the rest of the ordinance. And that's a fairly straightforward process. I don't foresee much problem with it. Are there any questions about, I haven't done that yet. I wanted to get some direction from you on how to deal with this other issue, the water issue, the 5 acre question is gonna have to be addressed. But in real substance, I don't think there's much in your ordinance that would be substantively changed. You have a very detailed
probably well and good. It's just that the structure of your ordinance is a little bit out of whack.
So I guess the question that I've come across is, in that scenario, I know that we cannot require the preliminary plat of McKinley request, or, make it where somebody, they can provide it, prior to, or once they provide something, it's actually.
You have the ability to require a plat application.
Yeah,
And a plat application can be pretty extensive, and it has to be a complete application. And so I'm not gonna say you have the ability to sneak in something that's got the word preliminary on it, because that's obviously gonna draw a flag. Any of those other terms that 285 or 285 contains, you're gonna want to avoid.
So let me ask you like this, so if someone wants to provide a plat application, pay their fees, we look at it as a commissioner's court, or our outside engineers look at it, and they find a flaw in it, we reject it, then they have to pay their fees.
I'm not sure about paying the fee again.
Is that a decision that the court can make? When somebody.
Yeah, the fees are due when they file the application, and you should not accept the application until it is complete, so you don't accept fees until it's complete.
But then if it gets rejected due to
If there is a defect within the plat application, this is where the process gets a little cumbersome, but you have to give them written notice of what it is that you object to. You have to cite the particular section of the ordinance and the statutory authority that you're relying on. And then you give it back to them. That stops the 30-day clock. You have to document that. You have to keep them. Somebody's going to have to be the scorekeeper, and it's got to be done officially so that the clock, we know, is stopped. Otherwise, if it's just not done with documentation, written material, it's going to get overlooked. And so you're going to have to up your game a little bit.
We have a scorekeeper if she doesn't quit by the end of this conversation.
You can stop the clock along the way. Once you stop the clock, the developer is under no time constraint as to when they have to respond. But once they do, then you've got to act within 15 days of that, restarting the clock, to set it at least on your docket for final approval. And so that is the protections that are in the statute.
So procedurally, since that conversation with Eric, we have not been accepting preliminary plats. We will take full final plats, and we're slowed down considerably just until we have these conversations. So we're doing the best we can there. In terms of Commissioner Leishman's question, I'm imagining he's sitting at lunch somewhere, developer walks in, developer says, I want to develop Blackacre, and I've got this preliminary plat, would you look at it?
That's a good question, because people do all sorts of things and call it filing their plat application.
Well, let's just take as part of my example that nobody thinks it's filing the plat. It's just.
Here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? Do you think this would fly? And that's what they get asked all the time. Can I do this?
I would avoid making an opinion in a restaurant or anywhere else unless it's in the official office of the commissioner or whoever is going to review the plat. I assume you have a development officer that is in
Actually, the commissioners have been the development officers of the office. This is my version.
This one.
Isn't there a developer commissioner meeting allowed before it is?
You can do a preliminary, and I use the word preliminary, you can do a meeting before the subdivision plat is ever developed. You can discuss what they want to do and how they're gonna do it. Get the, a lot of the detail work kind of fleshed out in a conversation with the commission.
Can he show you hypothetical drawing?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a plat.
There's not a plat application until all of it's complete and feasible. And so that is the official designation of what is a file or a fileable plat. It's got all of the stuff that you need with, till that time, you don't have a plat application. So, most of the work that will come out, it can be done fairly quick, it has to be done, but we will need to make all of this stuff a little as clear as we possibly can. We may want to talk about the commissioner having your discussion and all of that, but once it goes beyond that, have to go to a designated review officer, whether that be your engineer, your development officer, whoever. Those are things that need to be fleshed out.
Do you have a clear standard subdivision regulations, your template? Do you have something to define complete?
Yeah.
Can you stick that in ours?
Yes. There are a few other little questions that I noticed you're in ETJ of the city. There's some ambiguity. Do you all have interlocal agreements with all of the cities?
We do, and that's why your highlighted section gives me a little pause. Currently, we have interlocals with all municipalities that say if it's in the ETJ, it is exclusively, and I think he uses the word exclusive multiple times, exclusively the city's domain.
As I read it, that where it's property that's both in the city and in ETJ, then you had to get approval from both. I think, well, that may well work. I'm not sure, as long as it's working now, it always has, but there becomes, the cities, when that statute went into effect, cities were annexing their ETJ regularly, expanding the size of their city. They would add, they had the statutory mile or 3 mile buffer, and they would require certain conditions to be in that area, and then they would annex it. Well, cities are having their annexation powers sharply curtailed. So now, what we have is if the city is ruling on things that remain outside of the municipality, that are contradictory, if they are, to the county's rules and requirements, the county gets no say on that, and they're stuck with whatever the city decides to permit. This isn't that big deal in most cases, but in some cases where the city has required, let's say they require curb and gutter in ETJ, and they built, but then they say that those are not city streets, they're county roads, and the county says, well, we're not equipped to deal with paved streets and gutters and drainage systems, and so there's a conflict there. So that's just an area revisit and look at and see if what we want to do is in fact being done. So that the county is protected from future, well, if the property never becomes part of the municipality, should the city or the county rule that area outside of the ETJ?
I'll be interested in hearing if one of the or more commissioners has a different view on this. My impression is that we believe cities have more regulatory authority than we do, generally speaking. And that's why we have these locals, so that the ETJs are regulated as much as possible, or in the South, they're looked at strongly. And I don't think the commissioners in this county have a problem with the idea of if the road is paved, has some curves and drainage, that's a bad thing for their person.
It generally doesn't work, that's generally how it works, is the city has required more than the county would. And the county is ill-equipped by equipment, experience, to take over that, that.
So the question is though, that if there was a subdivision that was in the ETJ and fell into the county, and then the city said, well, that's a county road, technically until the county adopts a road, it's not a road.
Do we have to take it?
You don't have to.
So, and then secondly, which is the next line item underneath what's highlighted there, is the town of Round Mountain is well behind the cities of Johnson City and the cities of Morgan Falls. And their city limits and their ETJ is just a very unique diagram. So most of everything that happens in there falls under the Commissioner's Court.
We have all sorts of sprawling, weird looking cities because of the tendency they were doing to go out and grab anything they could fit along the highway. And then have ETJ rules that are fairly nondescript, fairly lax, and then the county to take care of those things out of the ETJ. We just have to look at your situation to determine what's the best policy for the county.
Mr. Bass, we have a subdivision in the ETJ. Let's say it's 300 acres, and 40 of it extends past the ETJ out into the county. Can the county tell the city that's yours? Or do we have to use county subdivision regulations on that 40 acres, and then the city uses theirs?
Interlocal country play.
Now presently, that's the yellow highlight, and it's an example of 40 acres is county regulated. Right? It's outside the ETJ.
If it's outside the ETJ, the county can delegate the total, the bulk of the project is in the ETJ. The city can be designated as the clearing house. Or you can require a bifurcation.
We presently have it so that it's all in the ETJ, it's under interlocal, and it's the cities. In his example, that'd be like a one-off, right? We would have to take action independently to say, that 40 acres, we want you to treat, we want to enter into a separate agreement with Johnson City to take it just like you're doing to direct the ETJ line.
Or go back and revisit your original interlocal agreement, revise it to make that accommodation.
On a one-on-one basis. I mean, per subdivision, I mean, we look at each one individually.
Well, so you can do that individually or treat it separately and have two sets of regulations. The whole idea of that was to make the developer only had to go to one-stop shop. And so when you deliberately break it out, you're making it go to two places. And so that becomes becomes problematic if the city has a 60-foot road right of way, you have the city has a 50-foot road right of way, and you have a 60. Potentially, they're gonna have two, in that 40 acres, you're gonna have to have wider streets. So that, for a developer, is problematic.
Well, if you have a city that allows 5,000 square foot lots, it supplies water and sewer, and yet you have 40 acres extended out outside of the ETJ, if they run water and sewer and do 5,000 square foot lots in the county.
Yes.
If we agree.
If you have a system, you can require smaller lots. And so an application that comes to you for a subdivision like that, that has a water sewer system, then your rationale for a larger lot is no longer valid. And so you can regulate it, you can require certain things, but you couldn't require 5 acres.
Could we just take the whole 40 acres and say, here's the church?
And that's what I'm suggesting, is, any part of it is outside of the ETJ, but the bulk is inside the ETJ, the city takes it.
Have you ever seen an example where an entire subdivision is not contiguous to the city limits or ETJ? It's just in the county. And it's not connected, it's not attached, it's not adjacent. It's outside the city, outside the ETJ, and the county wants to give it to the city for regulation.
I've not seen that. I understand that there are subdivisions that are outside of the ETJ where the city agrees to extend water and sewer to that subdivision. And they have pumping stations and all that already in place, or they're gonna plan to build a pumping station in the subdivision, and the subdivision lots will pay for it. And so the city does take that over, but it's still, at that point, it's still, the city and the county would have to cooperate and have this be done.
This is kind of the opposite. There aren't pumping stations, there's not provision of those things. And I don't think it's looked upon favorably by the county or the city in its current proposal.
So that would be a county problem, and it's in your jurisdiction, it's not in the city. And so if they're gonna subdivide outside the ETJ, they have to comply with your subdivision regulations. And if they're planning a water system, they're gonna have to get a convenience, a certificate of convenience and necessity for the TDCQ. And so the burden of that means they have to go to septic, and that means they gotta go under your 5 acre, assuming it's valid. That would be the rule, they would have to follow. Was that not the answer you were looking for? All right, this change to 231.001A3 comes up in several sections where if you can't regulate, arguably, the streets in a subdivision that is private, how often will that come up? Well, the family division, where you divide an original tract into 4 or fewer parts, and you don't lay out streets, parks, alleys, or other parts, that could come up. Again, if there are those 4 parts, if they're divided into lots, lots, I think planning requirement still stands. Now, what do you do with the streets? I'm having a hard time grappling with. You have a subdivision, it's laid out in lots. They're bound to have streets to get to those lots. And, the county, under the way the statute reads, is pretty much bound not to regulate the streets. They've taken that section out
You mean this last session?
in this last session,
Because we always have.
and all counties have done that. And so if that's the argument that the developer will make, well, that they took that section out, you can't regulate the streets in the subdivision. Well, that takes a whole lot of our authority away, and it means that, you know, you arguably have a subdivision with substandard streets. And then in 10 years, 20 years, all of those lots that were sold have to come back. They would come to you and say, well, our streets are in bad repair, we want you to take them over. And your remedies are to be to make a plat notation that private subdivisions will never become part of the county road system. And that your infrastructure requirements are intended to protect people from that sort of thing, but if they choose to deliberately ignore it, they buy those lots at their own risk.
Is there a law that each subdivider's got to say that out loud and in writing and
Well,
there's not off
your plat application should have a requirement in it that the note, and I think yours does, it should have notations that the street will not be accepted necessarily. And so that probably may go as far as it can go. We'll look at it and see if it can be strengthened.
And a couple of county attorney ago, we did some of that language on plat. So kind of understand how it works.
Yeah.
Were you at the hearings when this legislation was being?
I didn't attend all of them. The last,
My question really is, do you know if any of the committees took into account the first responder issues involved?
there was discussion about access by emergency vehicles, and the subdividers were less than, I think, candid in that they, sure, our streets are going to be adequate for that purpose. But they didn't go into much detail about how to build those. This raises the specter, lots larger than 10 acres have been subject to our subdivision if they had interior roads and streets. Now that may be subject to some question. A lot of counties had provisions that prohibited flag lots. That may be a part of the problem. In your ordinance, the Veterans Land Program, state, so forth, all of that, those everywhere that section 231 or 232.001A3 appears is going to have to be looked at. I think if you lay it out in lots or each individual piece is still meets and bounds, it really doesn't matter. The statute says it really doesn't matter what you call it. If it's individual parcels that are being sold, you still have to have a subdivision plan. The question is what level of scrutiny and regulation can you apply to the streets within that private subdivision? And that is going to have to be resolved. Going on through,
going to have to be resolved. This is another another area of the courts?
Probably it will be resolved through litigation. Where someone, a developer would sue the county over its regulation, or a landowner would sue the, I don't think they would sue the county if the county can't do it. I think they would sue their developer over failure to provide.
Do you have any county client that's already planning on just taking on the suit? Not altering their regulations, requiring roads to be spec?
Well, I've got a ton of counties that we've represented that have the language in there that public or private dedications are both subject to subdivision regulations. I expect the county may end up getting sued when they say your regulation applies to private streets and you no longer have that authority.
Are you suggesting taking it out of our?
I think so, yes, sir. I think that you would have very little grounds to stand on that continue to require subdivider to submit regulation that we don't have. That section is pretty clear, they're struck through.
Would any of you be amenable to, when he makes these suggested changes, if this one is isolated or carved out to be thought about? I don't know if I can go along with that.
I think my question is coming. Development that was proposed in my area, he goes private to that. Where is that? We're out. No.
Or there's lots, you got lots, all of them. But you can't make land roads,
Everybody protect the property. And can we do any kind of regulation on roads going to that?
I think and I don't know the answer to this, it's something that, I'm having a hard time personally understanding the rationale. It makes no sense to me, to make a subdivision rule that applies to the lots only, but doesn't include the street. How do you distinguish the street requirements from the lot requirements if you can't regulate the street? Can you require, how wide does it have to be? All of that stuff has to be determined. But,
So you're working on ours and trying to get us in compliance with the law, but you have clients that are.
I think any subdivision plat that's been approved and been platted, it's already been built, that's grandfathered, it doesn't apply.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying you have clients that aren't changing their subdivision regulations as next. So they still have on the books road regulations.
Right.
And why should we jump out ahead? Why should we jump out ahead unless it's all about risk avoidance, not what we see?
Risk avoidance is the primary reason you would make changes.
But we're in a bucket with a whole bunch of other counties.
A lot of other counties.
I've got four subdivisions in my precinct that are large acreage, and some of them small, but they have 30 properties. Their private streets all through, they're a mess. We worked for years trying to figure out a way to fix that. Now we're talking about going right back into that.
I think you're gonna go out into.
It is a mess. I mean, they don't have enough width to even run utilities. So,
That's exactly the arguments we made. The developers have a stronger lobby than we do. And the county right now are kind of in the doghouse with leadership. So there's really not a receptive audience. And state legislation. So Senator Betancourt, he sponsored another bill that went to conference committee that was just horrible. It had all kinds of stuff. And
really strict almost all of our authority to do these. Thankfully, that did not make it into the law, but this did. And so we're now confronted with how do we deal with it.
Mr. Bass, do you see a problem with us requiring 250 feet of road service?
Yes.
You do.
You can regulate frontage, but I think you've got an interior conflict in your statute that you require 250 feet of frontage across the board. And that probably would stand okay, except that you have in other places, you know, your minimum frontage is compressed to probably your frontage that joins the road. And so I think there's a problem. I just haven't quite focused on how to address it. I don't know that you can require all frontages to be a minimum of 250 feet.
So in the ones that you received, I'm assuming you received the latest and greatest one that was provided. There is an exception in there that if it's over a certain amount of acreage, that maximum, that 250 foot does reduce down. So
I will look at that again. I may not have the most recent, I think I did.
yeah, that was something that, I looked into trying to help that situation, but it was, I don't remember off the top of my head, there was a different, if it was 6 acres or more, then it would, might drop down, or 7, 10 acres, whatever.
Most of the subdivisions that we've redone their regulation fairly recently have required a minimum of a 60-foot frontage. And that is to accommodate the street. And it's to prevent, if you're gonna have, some counties have been reluctant to do away with flag lots because they got a lot of them. And they expect they'll have more, and they don't want little narrow flag lots, so 60 foot seems to work. But that's an issue.
We have had one experience where the 60-foot created a bunch of ribbons that proceeded on into the track, into the subdividing tracks. And so ostensibly, or on paper, there were all these 60-foot ribbons and driveways. In reality, what was going to happen was a subterfuge. They were all going to go together in this one driveway.
I agree, it's a mess. And that's why the flag lots per se are not favored. Sometimes
that's kind of why we went to the 250.
Yeah, 250 foot was designed to prevent that. As I say, if we design a rule, there are clever people out there intent on figuring out a way to avoid that rule. The definitions have quite a few references to various places where there are problems in the statute. I think most of those in the definition can be addressed by consolidation of the preliminary and final plans. Those are the major things I wanted to visit with you. Master plans, development plans, all of those keywords are going to have to be searched and eliminated without affecting the general rule. But I've raised enough
enough issues for you, I think, to worry about. What I would like to do is come back shortly with a revised plan that keeps your subdivision regulation substantially intact, but makes some changes that consolidate and eliminate some problems. Will it answer all the problems? We have to wait for litigation to figure that out.
So you're talking about bringing back, a clean set of proposed regulations that we could consider.
What I would try to do is, bring you a red line and a clean version, and if, that look we're good, then we go to the steps of adopting that. We have to do a takings impact assessment. In fact, you've already done one. When you adopted your most recent changes in April of 21, you still need to do another one. That has a 30-day window on it. So we're probably from today, assuming all things go well, you're probably 45 days from having a new ordinance. There are some issues that I don't know how we're going to address those, in the sense that, will somebody sue us? And I think we do what we think we need to do, and if they sue us, they sue us. Leaving that private subdivision under your regulation is maybe a bridge too far, but I think I may have to give it some thought. It's really still, to this day, I've grappled with this now since the end of May, and I'm still grappling with it. I'm not sure how best to address it. That being said, I'm at your discretion if you have suggestions on how to address it. We'll have to listen.
I think you're looking at a risk-averse group of commissioners. But that bridge that's too far is one that really appeals to me. This county has got an awful lot of gated community development. I'm thinking maybe one of those.
I would venture that's not a bad guess. Well, that's the game. There are a lot of counties that have devoted a lot of effort on those private subdivisions and making sure that they're built equally up to the same measure as a public subdivision. I would hate to see all of that go by the wayside. It won't change anything that's already there, but coming on, I foresee if we follow the legislator's lead, probably within 5 years, there won't be any public subdivisions, it will all be private. And that's a bad thing, because of 30-foot roads and so forth.
How do you feel about including in subdivision regulations county suggestions, county
recommendation?
Yeah, but short of a regulation.
That may be a way to go, to suggest to the developer, you're gonna avoid problems down the road if you build your roads to 60 foot. The question is, are you gonna require paving, are you gonna require?
I'm kind of thinking in other areas.
So like night sky, say night sky.
Night sky, rather than say you can't require night sky, it just says on the streets.
Rainwater collection. That's a good thing.
Can you require rainwater collection, or you can recommend it?
Given the fact that
water is becoming more and more critical, and that's part of your contemplation that you're gonna require rain collection. I think that's something you could include in your ordinance.
So then what about, for instance, we have in our current, we have fire suppression. So if you have a certain amount of home, a certain amount of lots, you get that 25.
Fire protection also be covered.
That's covered, it's in there, we're good with that.
Yes.
But that's a requirement, but that more legally, we are authorized to require.
You're required, I mean, you're authorized.
So back to the rainwater one. As opposed to embedding it in the regs, what about adopting a form as part of the application, as part of the checklist, that the developer has to sign off on, that says I acknowledge, that recognizes the court's intent that rainwater collection is important.
I don't see anything that says you can't do that.
I'm trying to give it more efficacy than just sticking it in a subsection.
Nice guys, I mean, the same thing, we recommend.
But nice guys is actually different, so I just need to make sure that, whenever you have somebody call you, you tell them to walk through and go on the internet, go to the subdivision rules and this section. That way they can see it for themselves. So, I mean, if it's possible, then yes, I'd love to
If
include
you want to do, have it included in your ordinance, but you might also add something that is referred to it, that you adopted that,
Like have other recommendations like family size, where they actually have a fire plan on each one. If those are just recommendations only, it says.
It's gotta be a recommendation. We can't tell people how to.
No, you can't recommend it like nice guys. Awesome.
So, one of the,
See, I'm not so sure that doesn't make sense. The legislation authorizes the county to impose a certain gallon size for this and a certain gallon size for that. For fire suppression. Well, what good is it if the fire department can't hook up? So it seems to me you could regulate.
no, yeah, I thought he was talking about individual rainwater
I'm
collection.
talking about private.
I'm saying.
I'm talking just purely just like nice guys. You can't force the developer to do it, but you can recommend it.
Definitely could recommend zero scaping and artificial grass.
Yes,
Not even one go.
No same honesty. Can't have that same honesty.
That's right. Well, I'm not recommending.
Yeah.
I was hoping to tell the developer would encourage some of that, they have restrictions that they can do, you don't have.
Yeah. But we recommend that their covenants or their regulations that internally address those areas. I don't see any harm in that, but you're gonna have to have express authority for requiring.
So, Mr. Bass, I had one yesterday, last night, 7 acres, sold it to their child. They're struggling, the father wants to purchase 3 of or a smaller portion, so it'll divide this piece of property in less than 5 acres. So, what do you, and let's just, in that scenario, what do you say to that? I mean, I want to help the families out, but I also have to I'm trying to follow rules, so.
There is the family exception that, make certain accommodations if you're gonna sell off part of it, keep part of it. There are, but if your 5 acres comes into play, I think you gotta stick to your gun.
That's the water, that's the sewer setbacks, right? The requirements are 5 acres.
So, anybody disagree with shortly with clean set.
What I would like for you to do is find that correspondence with HCQ. I would also like a list of the things, you know, the recommendations and so forth that you would like to see in the ordinance.
For recommendations?
For recommendations. Those are things that are unique to Blanco perhaps, or this area generally, but I would have to look. I don't have anything like that we.
And that may take a little bit, unless you all have another idea, because many of these recommendations came from outside the Commissioner's Court. And I think the Commissioner's Court needs to decide which ones to make official recommendations.
And I would think most of the recommendations that we talked about during our public meetings, things of that nature, we try to include in proposed plans. The one that was left out was the one that I thought we had just no authority to do. And I understand the recommendation, so, I mean, to my knowledge, above and beyond what you already see in there will be, you know, rainwater collection.
But the thing is, I don't have it in front of me, but some of the recommendations with more detail. I can't personally sit here today and tell you that I agree with every word that was in it. So it may take a little bit for us to come together.
Well, we need to do the preliminary to kind of bring this ordinance under the legislative guideline. But then we can always come back and make it later. So if there's something required more thought or deliberation, fine, let's not push this back. Let's go ahead and get as much done as we can get done, and then worry about the other stuff and a little more leisure than this.
Do you want to say anything about RV parks and tiny homes?
RV parks and tiny homes are covered by your existing subdivision regulation. Manufactured homes, you have a regulation for those. RV parks, arguably campgrounds, tiny homes, they all fall under the subdivision regulation. So you may want to include a section on those and put everybody on notice, and I've got some language that might work for that.
But we did send you our red line tiny home RV park regulations.
I'm not sure you did, but.
To Eric, please. You may want to take a look at those also.
Okay.
Let me, I think something you just said is important right now. That RV parks and tiny home are subject to subdivision regulations. So, the commissioner here has some tiny homes being developed somewhere or proposed. And today, it seems to fall under our RV park and tiny home regulations. But our RV park and tiny home regulations have a bunch of stuff in them about an office, bathrooms, this, that, the other, that apply to your traditional RV park, like you see at camping park. Won't really apply to this. These to me are more like apartments that are just separated. They're tiny homes in a row. And so to me, that up until today, until you hit me with this terrible road information, today, that development to me looks more like a subdivision regulation situation where they have to comply with our subdivision regulations.
That is, you can.
Because otherwise, they have to make them have an office and they don't need an office.
Yeah, I understand. Anytime you divide up a tract of property, you put a tiny home on it, and the tiny home's self-contained. But it's on a unique footprint. That's a division of land.
end up with accommodations that would prevent them to build their subdivision, tiny home subdivision, without the burdens of meeting all of your subdivision regulations.
When does the aspect of the legislation that takes away our road spec authority go into effect?
September 1st.
So today, if these tiny home folks are saying, we don't need to make roads to your RV park specs, and for example, just my opinion, that we still do, because we'll still have first responders going into these tiny home communities like you would everywhere else. So while they may not get an office or a bathroom or this or that, they still need to meet basic specs of the subdivision. Wow.
I think that's a reasonable approach. That's my approach to it. I think you have to have a street lane.
But on September the 1st,
Arguably, you have little ability to require. Again, that may fall under something that's highly recommended. But those are questions you're gonna have to answer. I have a hard time understanding how you're gonna lay out a subdivision without laying out the street. The street calls for a 30-foot right of way. Your ability to deny the plat may be somewhat in question.
So the same piece of, the same property that you're referring to, that let's just say that I'm not dividing the property, I'm not making lots. I'm just putting 5 tiny homes on my piece of property, and I'm gonna rent them out. Do they even fit these rules?
It takes a little bit of a stretch, but I think anytime you divide up property into spaces, you make yourself subject to the regulation.
isn't there an AG opinion on that?
And I've had it questioned by another lawyer, so. There was a case down on the coast where somebody wanted to build a condominium. They said, well, that condominium isn't a subdivision. And the AG said, no, it is, because each one of those units in that is still a subdivision of land. That's the case, or the AG opinion we relied on in justifying our application. Another lawyer said, well, that's a different situation than condominium association or that condominium. It should not be regulated, so.
Now this is flipped, because in the condominium situation, you have individual owners.
Right.
On that tract.
Right.
In this case,
It's just purely a rental situation.
yes, but how is that different than an apartment?
Well, I don't think it is.
And isn't an apartment building a subdivision?
It's not been held, a lot of these apartments, they make them set aside parking and they make them set aside other things, but they've not applied the subdivision regs to individual housing units.
So health and safety applies, but the rest of the.
Well, they still have to be, if they're gonna come in and develop a tract of land and make an apartment building, they still have to get a permit. And the permit has some requirements to it. It may not have all the requirements, but that's something that you would have to determine.
A tiny home built on the ground, on a slab, or sitting on a rubber tire trailer, or up in a tree. Are they all the same? Are they based on just footage that determines if they're a tiny home or?
Well, there's really very little as far as definitions in the law now for tiny homes. Now, tiny homes have been addressed and the bills haven't passed. So for right now, I would think any home, that kind of fits the general 500 square feet or less definition, whether it be on a slab, whether it be still have wheels under it.
should be part of your subdivision. It would apply.
But if the wheels are gone,
Well, if it's either way, if it's built on a slab, if it's part, it could be moved, or it's permanently fixed, you still have a regulation. It's the space that trailer occupies, or that tiny home occupies.
But if it's on tires, it's not an RV. It would be.
It's not an RV because an RV is defined by federal law. And the tiny homes, as of yet, are not. It's coming, but legislation is slow.
I've actually seen a little subdivision where they're taking utility trailers and building a little cabin on top. They've got a whole room out there. Yeah. Park.
The question often comes up, one guy owns 25 acres and he wants not to subdivide it, not to provide streets. He just wants to have a park where I guess you park your car and you walk through your house. And that's, is that a subdivision? And the answer is, in my opinion, yes. Still a subdivision. You're selling a space. You're renting a space. That's still a subdivision. Now, there's some litigation that's filed around Magdalene County that may settle that question. But right now, it's undetermined.
so you have these to take a look at as well. So this will be an RV park. What else do we need to cover today?
But as we said, right now, I have a developer that is beating on the board and turning in their plat. I have to accept it under the current rules and regulations that we have in place.
Yes, sir. I would think that,
Well,
go ahead.
as a final plat application. Well, because the law's been in effect since 2019. This isn't something that's gonna take effect in 2021.
There's plat.
There is no.
Here it is.
Even though that's in our rules and regulations as of, until we adopt new rules.
Until the legislation goes into effect, section 30, your rules are your rules.
As far as roads and whatnot, but as far as a preliminary plat versus a final plat, that's been the law for 4 years.
Yeah, it's been, so since 2019, you've not been able to require preliminaries and finals.
And the fact that it's in our subdivision regulations doesn't matter.
What would happen if somebody were to challenge you? The court would impose the 2019 rule, and say you can't require a preliminary plat, a final plat. You've got an application before you that arguably satisfies your regulation. The court would not itself order you to reconsider and approve the plat, but it couldn't approve the plat itself.
So today, as we sit here, what Commissioner Leishman wants to work with would be, that still is legal, is the pre-conference or the preliminary meeting between the commissioner and the developer. And whatever the developer brings and lays out on the table is just stuff, whether it's written on a napkin or however it might be done. That's just stuff to look at the preliminary conference.
Right. You can still do it.
Can we control our application where we can make it as stringent as we want? Require things that the county decides the developer might need to do within the application, or is it a template from the state that we have?
There's not a state template, but you got to be able to show the developer and just satisfy the operating under a statute does give you that authority. So if you're asking for something that you just pulled out of thin air, it's unlikely that that could be enforced.
So there is one thing that I did add into those rules and regulations, and it was based on, when people was to turn something in, because we know that the clock starts at a certain time. As soon as they submit their information, our clock starts, right? So, completed, however it works out. But, you know, having commissioners reports twice a month, you know, in order for the judge and secretary to make sure everything is in place, if she was to take it on this day, we would fall 3 days short of that meeting, so it would really. So we can set, you know, you can turn it in on, you know, the first and the second Tuesday of the month or whatever, I don't know, but.
I think what he's asking is, can we
Require certain days.
Yes, sir.
That would coincide with our commissioners, our regular scheduled commissioners court meetings.
Schedule.
Can you only accept that period of time before Commissioner's Court? Have a date, if that's, the date that applies, they're gonna apply, or else have to wait till the next.
He's still, I think he's still skeptical, but the point, and I think you're probably gonna struggle with it, is 30 days, and we should have 2 meetings within 30 days, but the real catcher, to my way of thinking, is the word completed.
It has to be a complete application. And so if you've got things.
And it's sort of not complete until somebody's, maybe not literally, but stamps it and says it's complete.
Right. I think so.
But with that being said, you know, it has to run, and I'm still assuming, it has to run in the paper. If I submit a final plat, it has to run in the paper for whatever 2 consecutive weeks or however long it is.
And that is an issue here because we only have weekly.
Unless we can do away with that as opposed, as long as we post it on our website. Is that possible?
Awesome. You were shaking your head back there.
You were shaking no?
Okay, I'm not taking, okay, if I'm on vacation, I'm not here, I'm currently kind of doing that already. It's like it is 30 days for your recommendations and all that. If it's 35 days, they're ready to bring it in 35 days, I kind of scoot you down calendar and only accept it 30 days before the first meeting. But, you know, within the 30 days of the meeting.
These are a lot of housekeeping things that need to be thought about and built into the statute. My thinking is if anything in the original, say you come in, it looks complete, and you accept it, that starts your clock. Then something else comes up, no, I missed that, I should have called it, but I didn't, whatever. I would think you would have to send a letter or document that you've notified the applicant in writing, cite the rule, cite the statutory authority for that rule, and that stops the clock. They have an undetermined amount of time to reply. Once they reply, you got 15 days. Now, 15 days is less than, the whole amount can't, the 15 days can be subsumed within the 30 days. In other words, it doesn't give you 15 additional days. But it puts a clock on you that you have to have a hearing on.
But now you've said, now we have 2 words that cause me to think there needs to be some work on completed, and what that means, and accepted. Is that an affirmative act, or is it just the fact that it got set on our desk? Because if it takes some sort of notification, we accept your completed application.
You know, and again, I don't know what the presumably a developer comes in, sits it down with you, and you go through the application, you check off all of the boxes. If there's any
box that you haven't checked, it's an incomplete application. And you return it to them as incomplete. Assuming you go through and you check everything off, and I can't imagine what that would be. If you check the box, you're satisfied, but if there were something that comes up that has to be addressed, you're gonna have to give them notice and go from there. So acceptance of the plat or filing of the plat is not done until it's met that preliminary review. Any boxes that you can't check, it's incomplete, you don't accept it, it doesn't start. Once you've accepted it, it starts, but you've got to stop the clock and anything else that comes up. And it's just, you're gonna have to be sure of what you're doing. I mean, right now, it's hard for me to think of anything once you check all the boxes. And let me say this, if all of the boxes are checked, you have no discretion to turn it in. So you can approve the plat, you can approve the plat with conditions, the conditions being yet to be met. You can disapprove the plat, but you can only disapprove it if they can't submit a plan that fits. The only time I've had a plan, with potential rejection in mind, I had a county up in, well, it was Palo Pinto County. They were building around the Possum Kingdom Lake, and there was a bluff and lake, and there was less than 60 foot in between. They had 50 foot right of way. They were wanting to build it, build an entrance less than 60 foot. And the court granted a variance on that, but it took court hearing, it took a vote on that. So that situation might take an extension of time that you will stop the clock, take the action, and go forward.
And did you say that these have to be read in the newspaper now? Because before, I thought you had told me that they did not.
I don't
The new
believe
subdivision does not, the flat does.
what you're doing now.
No, I'm not.
Not just misinterpreted.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any requirement that you publish. All of this is done internally as far as, no, there's not a requirement now.
That's my understanding.
So, just out of curiosity, why does a replat require publication, but not a whole full-blown subdivision?
The replat conceivably takes away vested rights of a lot of owners who own property in bought lots and they own property. If the plat as it's accepted establishes vested rights. So if you're purporting to take away, add to, alter that plat, you gotta give notice, and in some cases, you gotta get the consent on all of those lots. There are exceptions and other things, that's generally why that's required. All right.
Well, as all right as.
I think I have my marching orders, and I will try to get this done as quickly as I can. I'm also engaged right now to do tax abatement agreements with city like this, supply county, so trying to get back to you quickly is going to be difficult, but I'm trying to get it done as quickly as I can.
We have an executive session listed, but I can't imagine, I don't know what justification would be, consulting with attorney, and we are fine with it being open also, so unless you need something, we're just gonna skip that. Anybody else? Well, in that case, I'm gonna return us to the, take us out of the workshop and return us to the open meeting. And I believe we've included all of the items but 13 to 15.
I'm supposed to adjourn.
Second. Commissioner Brown, seconds, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Adjourned.